Hey, what's up everyone? Mark Price here at devslopes.com, and this is an exciting lesson. We're going to dive into React and get a React app up and running, really a skeleton project for it. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's all involved in getting it up and going, the things we're going to be using. So it's going to be a little bit of information overload, but you can watch this video again and again until you can figure out all the pieces. So whenever you're working with frameworks like React or Angular 2, there's a bit of setup involved, and you got to understand what's going on under the hood a little bit, because it's just not all magical. Just not unlike working with just plain JavaScript or HTML. So we're taking things to a whole new level here. So what I want you to do is go to facebook.github.io/react/docs/installation.html. Okay, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to use their pre-built skeleton project, and I highly recommend that you use this for your projects. Of course, you can't use this if you already have a project and you want to add React to it, but we're in a very good position as we're starting a brand new project. And so what we're going to do is just follow the steps that are on the screen right here. So first things first, open up your terminal or your shell, whatever you're using, and we're going to do npm install -g create React app. This is an npm package, okay, that we're installing globally on our system that allows us to create React apps and does all the compiling and gets all the tools and things we need set up. And this is really important because if you're setting up tooling for the first time, it can take you hours. In fact, I recently built a project with React, and the tooling took me about 2 days, like 16 hours worth of work to get it all perfect. And someone's done all the work for us here, so we don't have to do that. So we're going to install this package here globally so we can create any React app we want. I need to turn on my node here. Okay, so let's try this again. And it's just going to download and we got to wait. Cool. Now that that's all done, it took me a while. What we're going to do is we're going to actually use the package to create a React app. So I'm going to go into my desktop here, and I'm going to do create React app. So we're calling the npm package. We're going to use it, and then we're going to name our project. In our case, we're going to call ours Swag Shop Web. Instead of Swag Shop API, this is Swag Shop Web, which indicates it's the front end. And this will take a few minutes. And we have our project created, and so it's here on the desktop. So I'm going to cd into Swag Shop Web. And if you ls, you can notice that there are some directories and files. And what's really cool is all we have to do is type in npm start inside that directory, and the project loads, and actually even loads a web browser for us. And there you have it. So React is running, and there's a local server running for this. So that is pretty simple, right? Just getting it up and going. But let's actually talk about what's in the project here. So let's open up our brackets, or whatever IDE you're using. I'm going to open a folder, and we're going to go into our Swag Shop Web. Perfect. Okay, so yes, thank you. Okay, so here we go. We got a few different files here, and what you can see is the node modules, which is typical. We have a node project, so it has node modules, and there's a package.json. Okay, and here in the scripts, when we ran npm start, our start says, hey, use the React scripts module and then use that start. Okay, so if we go into node modules, React scripts, in the package.json, okay, it's saying use this start, or if there's no start specified, it runs the bin. And so our npm start calls this script, which runs React scripts, and then it runs the React scripts.js, which does other things. So I'm just kind of following the cookie crumb trail here, and it's just good to know what things are doing. It's not magic. Things are actually happening, and someone's written this code for us. So we just kind of want to look around, see what's in here, okay? We have a couple of dependencies for our project. Okay, one is React, and one is React DOM. And then there's dev dependencies. Okay, dev dependencies are dependencies that you only need for development, like your tools, but the end user has no need for it. So React scripts is just for our project to get things up and running. And so we have two packages here, and this is the official React library, okay? React which allows us to write our special JSX code, which you'll see shortly, and it allows the rendering of elements onto the DOM with that special syntax. And then the React DOM is actually a package that's like the glue. It takes the special React syntax and rendering and brings it over into your browser. And so those are both two official Facebook React packages that are included here that we're going to need. Okay, and what's really cool is your code can be written in these files directly here. What you're seeing in your browser, okay, this is actual code running. So they've set everything up for us. And so, for instance, if we wanted to change welcome to React, okay, what we would do is go into our main file here, which is app.js, okay, and let's find where it says welcome to React. To get started, let's see, here it is, welcome to React, okay, and we can change this to welcome to the swag shop. Okay, and save it, go back to the browser, and if we didn't even have to refresh, it did it for us automatically there, which is really cool. So we made a change, we saved it, it automatically detected that change, and it went ahead and changed it here. And this is important. Again, I told you it took me recently 2 days to set all this tooling up by hand, because you actually have to set up the tools to watch for changes and then refresh the page, and they've done all that stuff for us here. So already we're able to quickly just jump in and modify this code here. Now, you're seeing some weird things here, like what's this render? How is it that we have HTML inside of JavaScript? This doesn't make sense to me, and my IDE's acting all funky. Okay, it's got all these different colors, and some don't have colors. What's going on? Well, the problem is this is not just a plain JavaScript file, okay? We actually need to import a package that allows our IDE to recognize the special JavaScript or React JavaScript syntax, which is JSX. It's that unique syntax, and we need to support it in our IDE. So let's do that now. So what we're going to do is go to File, Extension Manager, wait for it to load, and in the search bar, in the Available tab, we're going to type in JSX, and we're going to install, scrolling down here, JSX hint. This is going to give us like warnings and things like that related to JSX, that special syntax. We're going to install that here. Okay, so that is installed, and there's one more we're going to install, and it's this one right here. It's the React.js JSX language, and it's the one that says GitHub/Automenta. It's a really good one, and there's lots of activity on it versus some of these other ones. You can, of course, choose a language of your choice. These are the ones that I found worked really well. Okay, perfect. All we need to do is go down here to where it says JavaScript and change this to JSX. And now things are looking a lot prettier, okay? So things are back to normal the way we would expect them to be. And so we've got all we did here was installed some tools to make it better. There was no errors. It was still compiling just fine. We just made it more readable. And so we changed the name here. So you notice how when we changed the name, it automatically changed for us, refreshed the server and everything. So that's great. There's a lot of tools under the hood that are helping us get there. The next thing I want to show you is this public folder, okay? Typically when you have a public folder, these are files that are loaded up statically, meaning they're not changing a lot. They're there, and the server knows how to load them up from a more static perspective, okay? And here in the index.html, okay, and you've got a link file here, and this is where you can put other links. So if we want to have some public-facing CSS or like Bootstrap, which we will include in just a moment, we'll want to put it in here. But notice how, even though there's stuff on the screen in our browser, okay, none of that's here in the index.html file. So with React, you won't actually code in HTML files. In fact, none of you really won't write any HTML in an HTML file. You'll write it in your JavaScript files, those JS files. And so the title of the page is still here, of course. We can put a favicon, but here's the interesting thing. So here in the body, there's a div and there's an ID called root. This is just an arbitrary name that was picked, okay, root. So if we go to index.js, this is actually the starting point for React. Okay, so we're importing React from the React package, we're importing React DOM from React DOM, and we're importing the app from the ./app, which is actually the file that has the code and the changes we want. And then we're also importing a CSS file here. I'm going to change this file here to JSX. And we're importing a CSS file. We can actually use classes straight from CSS files in React, which is really cool. And so what's happening here is we're saying React DOM.render. So React DOM is going to grab the element that you specify. So we're saying document.getElementById. So we're grabbing the root element, and what's happening is we're grabbing an element and we're replacing it with this app here. Okay, import app from app. So all this code here that has been created for us, where we change the welcome to the swag shop, okay, when we export it here like this, what's actually happening is we can now use it as an HTML tag, which is really awesome. So we create a component. Think of it as a component. You know, in HTML, when you can do like an iframe or a p or a div, those HTML tags, well, in React, you get to create your very own HTML tags, and it has all the code underneath it. And so in the index.js, we're saying, hey, let's load up this app tag. That's just what we called it, app.js, and it's going to do all these things here under the hood for us, and then it's going to throw it on the screen at runtime. And the whole reason and purpose why you ever want to use React is because it allows you to build components that are reusable, and they can do thinking. They can hit an API, they can download data, okay, much better than just working with HTML and CSS, okay? If I wanted to create a weather widget that told the current temperature, okay, in HTML I'd probably have to put it in my code file and then copy it into another code file, and then what I would have to do is probably mess with the CSS to make it look nice. And with React, you wouldn't have to do that. You create a component one time, you give it its own CSS and its own layouts, and then all you ever have to do, if you ever want to reuse it, is something like this, where you just include the HTML tag and it all magically works. And so there's some huge benefits to working with React. Okay, and so this import syntax also is probably a little bit unfamiliar to you if you've never worked with ES6. So React, of course, can work with plain vanilla JavaScript, but it's recommended now that you work with ES6. And what ES6 is, it's kind of a superset of JavaScript. So JavaScript's been around for many, many years. It was written in 3 days, okay, very, very fast, the first iteration of it. And so, it's a little bit sloppy. It's been around for a long time, but there's major limitations. And the problem is, though, the browsers like Microsoft Edge and Chrome and Safari, they can't just all say, you know what, let's get rid of JavaScript and let's use a completely new language. Let's use Swift, for instance. Swift would be a great language to write web apps in, okay? But it's not going to happen, at least not for a while. And here's the reason why. If you stopped supporting JavaScript, pretty much every single website on the internet would stop working. And so that's not an easy change to make. So they came up with a solution, which is ES6. And what it is, it's code that you write that is actually much more efficient or well laid out. You can create classes and break things out. It's more modularized, and it gets rid of some of the nasty things of JavaScript. And what happens is you write all this code, this ES6 code, and then you get a compiler or for more or less a compiler or a renderer. And what it's doing is it'll take the code that you write, this nice fancy code that looks so great, and it converts it into the old JavaScript so your browser can read it. So the code that you actually write in ES6 isn't directly being read by a browser. You run a tool that takes your code and then converts it into the old JavaScript. And this is the new way moving forward. And so as we go along, I'm not going to be teaching the very specific things of ES6, but as we go along, I'll explain things. So for instance here, this import React from React, in the old JavaScript, you might have said var React equals require React. So that's the old JavaScript way of doing it. In fact, this would still work. If I did this right here, it would still work. But we're not going to do that. We're going to do things the better way, the new way, and which is using ES6. And so as we come along certain changes here, I'll explain them. So we're importing an NPM module called React, and then React DOM. We're importing the app, which is the actual code file, that module, that component for the main page. And then we're also importing the CSS, index.css, which is, it has some CSS set for the body, okay? And index.js, okay. And then we're shoving that all here into the document, okay? So I know there's a lot going on, even just with what you're looking at, but there's also a lot going on under the hood. Okay, remember ES6, how you need that transpiler or that compiler to turn it from one language into another? Well, that's actually working. It's under the hood here. It's inside of this It's right here inside of our React scripts, this nice package that those people made for us. Okay, so there's this Babel RC, which is what you would run. That's the compiler that takes the ES6 and turns it into JavaScript. It also works with React as well too. And so there's also something underneath the hood called Webpack that's basically taking these scripts and running them and watching for changes and doing all that stuff for us. Lots of complicated setup that we're not going into. This is just a beginner's intro. And this is the longest winded of all the lessons that it's going to be. I'm just letting you know there's lots going on. But you don't have to know what's going on under the hood in order to work with React just yet. You'll want to learn eventually. But right now, you can work with this pre-built template that's all set up for us. And this is a very good choice for any project. Okay. One more thing I want to show you here is, so here in the app.js, okay, this is like a component. And it's called app right now just because it's our main app file. But if I did want to create a weather component, I would probably create another JS file called weather component, and I would import React, and I would also import, it would have its own CSS file, and then I would create my own code for it here. And so the really cool thing is your components are self-contained. The HTML's in here, you can link the CSS, and they're all grouped together. You know how CSS and HTML can get really nasty? You can have 100 CSS files, at a global level, and you're like, what's overriding what? I don't know what's going on. All that goes away with React because you bundle your CSS and your HTML together in the smallest components possible. So I know that app.css is not going to affect in any way the index.css because index is above the app. Okay, so if we go to app.css, this is just a CSS file. There's some different things like app logo, app header, app intro. Okay, and if we go back to app.js, look at this. Class name equals class name equals. So you're basically setting CSS classes straight from this file here, which is really cool. You can just pass them on in, and that's the class that gets applied to that div. So this would be similar to saying class equals in regular HTML, except in our case with React, we're saying class name equals app. And so if we go to app.css, it's aligning text to the center. And just to show you, if we look at this page, right, the text is aligned to the center. What if I want it to the left? And just save this here. Now it's all aligned to the left. So it's definitely working, which is really cool. And we've just passed it in there using the app.css. So you can also import files directly. This is a logo, an SVG file. This is a graphic. And you can actually, using the import syntax, you can import it straight from your file system here. And then you can just load it on up right here. Image source equals logo. And it automatically finds the URL path name and puts it in there. Really, really cool. Okay, so this is an overview. We're going to call this video done. I know it's a lot to cover. What I recommend that you do is stop this video and just start digesting this. What's going on, what it looks different from regular HTML, what looks different here than the regular JavaScript that you're used to working with. Like what is this render function? Why is it here? Another ES6 thing. Which things are ES6? For instance, the word class. That's a new ES6 thing. You can create classes like in other object-oriented programming languages. Extends component. Okay. So there's different things you can do with ES6, and you don't necessarily have to understand it completely just yet. We'll go into it as we go through these things here, but a lot to take in. Don't expect you to get it all right now. You're becoming a better developer. You're moving on to harder things. If this is hard, that's good. It means you're getting better and you're learning, and it does take time. I wouldn't expect anybody to get this off right off the bat, but you should know CSS and HTML by now before you're taking this, as well as regular JavaScript, and then you're good to go. So that's it for now. Mark Price at devslopes.com. Moving on and forward.